We're here with Samuel Ronan, who's a veteran running for the DNC chair. He's from Ohio, and he made a big splash at a recent DNC forum where he agreed with the assessment that the DNC put their thumb on the scale against the progressive and for the establishment candidate Hillary Clinton. Here's that tape right now.
Next is Sam Ronan.
Well, I gotta say, Keith Ellison makes a very strong argument, and for the right reasons. We do need to reach out together. We do need to build those bridges because they were burned, and they were burned deliberately. Because so many of those people that are disenfranchised thought the primaries were rigged against them and their candidates. And the fact of the matter is, it's true. The Democratic Party has not been open to outsiders and new members in our entire history. And if we want to bring those people back, we need to prove to them that we're willing to open the doors. Secondly, and most importantly, we have to have accountability. If we're going to be Democrats, if we're going to be congressional leaders, if we're going to be secretaries of labor, and if we're going to be mayors, and we're going to call ourselves Democrats, we damn well better own up to that. Because right now, we have senators, we got congressmen who called themselves Democrats who are rubber stamping Trump cabinet appointees, and that is unacceptable. Now, I might not have enough clout or all these different, people supporting me, but what I do have, thank you, Keith, Team Ronan. What I do have is conviction. I was in the military too. I know what a good leader looks like, and I know that it's easy to say that we will fight against the opposition. Everybody in this room is and has been doing that. That goes without saying, but the hard part, the truth, the reality, is that we messed up as a party. We need to own that, and we need to hold our fellow Democrats responsible. As your DNC chairman, that's exactly what I would do. I would offer those olive branches. I would build those bridges. I would give millennials, progressives, and Bernie-crats the opportunities, the resources, and the tools to succeed, but I would also hold our members accountable. Because if we don't, we lose what little credibility we have left, and that is the fight we must win.
So that was a pretty gutsy move, Samuel, because it seemed like none of the other candidates were willing to admit what was painfully obvious to everyone else. So let me ask you to start off, who did you support in the primary?
So in the primary, I most definitely voted for Bernie Sanders. I was even vetted by some of his groups, the online social communities. They even had me as one of their vetted candidates. I liked what he had to say. It closely aligned with my own beliefs. Obviously, I won't say up here and pander and say it was 100% everything Bernie said I said, but I mean, he had the vision that was going to bring people back into government and allow us to prosper together.
So let me just ask you, why were you hesitant to support Hillary Clinton in the primary?
Because with Hillary Clinton, she was getting attacked, and the smear campaign against her, I mean, I kind of saw what had happened during when she ran against Obama. Obama was just more charismatic. There was a slight smear campaign against her, but it was only between the Democrats. It wasn't so much that the Republicans are trying as hard. And then to see that repeat itself again after she had been in the Obama administration, I kind of realized that, Hillary Clinton may, quote unquote, be the most credentialed candidate of all time, but she's probably not going to win and inspire the American people like Bernie Sanders clearly is, let alone the message that she was conveying. She kept adopting Bernie movements. She kept adopting more leftist and more progressive policies as the campaign went on. And that struck me as not very and having integrity either. So it was clearly the better of the two choices.
So what led you to believe that the DNC rigged the primary in favor of Hillary and against Bernie?
Well, the fact that the party was rigged against anybody who was an outsider or new. I mean, you take my campaign, for example, and you multiply that across the country. I was one of, I think, 51 state representative candidates in Ohio who were running for the first time, and we had zero support. Some less than others, some more than others, but we did not have an infrastructure to work with. We were glorified independents who had the name Democrat next to our name in rural America, which is pretty much a death toll in most cases. So absolutely, the The primary was rigged. I mean, you want to call it, because of all the Debbie Wasserman Schultz interactions, sure, but the party itself is just designed to not incorporate outsiders. So all that adding up.
So why do you think the other DNC candidates are so hesitant to admit what's obvious to everyone? In fact, Debbie Wasserman Schultz even resigned her post as the DNC chair because of the protests over what was revealed in the WikiLeaks emails, which is that they were definitely on board with the Hillary Clinton campaign in collusion and tilting the scale in her favor against Bernie. Why do you think the rest? So it's obvious. It's not even like this isn't even a debate to anybody. It was so shocking to see them call it a gotcha question at one of the events. Why do you think they're so hesitant to tell the truth? And isn't this what the problem is with the party?
So, Jimmy, you hit the nail right on the head. It is what the problem is with the party. And the fact that the 27-year-old veteran nobody from Ohio is the only one talking about it tells you everything you need to know. I'm not saying that the other candidates are corrupt or weak or whatever, but clearly it's in their best interest to stay on the good side of the establishment because they feel like the establishment is still going to continue to carry on. And that's just simply not the case. What the DNC members fail to realize, to include my candidates, is that the civil unrest being levied against Donald Trump is just as vehemently levied against the establishment and the Democratic Party. And it's because there's no trust, there's no faith, and there's no accountability within the party. So why am I the only one addressing it? Because it would be political suicide for the others to do so. And even if it weren't political suicide, I don't think they would do it. I don't think they're strong enough as leaders of what we need that they would be willing to take that risk, that they'd be willing to step up and admit it.
How would it be political suicide if someone admitted the truth? You just admitted it. So, and you still, I think you still have a chance, right, to be the DNC chair? Isn't that why you said it?
Oh, no. That's exactly why I said it. And I'm saying it's political suicide for their flavor of politics because, for instance, Keith Ellison is already a congressman, right? So if he doesn't play ball with his fellow peers in Congress, it's going to crucify him. But at the same time, we saw what Bernie did. He went against the grain and he had all of that popularity, and he still does. Out of all the senators that were Democrats that could have debated Ted Cruz last night, who was chosen? Who was picked? Who stepped up? Bernie Sanders. Maybe Elizabeth Warren could have been a distant second, whatever. But the fact of the matter was, it wasn't Klein. It wasn't any of the other heavyweights that are Democratic senators. Keith Ellison could easily set himself apart from the rest of his congressional partners, peers, by saying exactly what I'm saying and meaning it. Mind you, he would have to mean it, of course, but it would catapult him forward. I wouldn't stand a chance at that point because he has the backing of Bernie, he has the backing of, unions and whatnot. If he's also telling the truth, it's a done deal, but he's not. And I don't think he gets it. And I think that's the problem.
Okay, we just changed the lighting. Now Sam's going to look a lot better. Okay, so we're moving forward. How do you think the Democratic Party needs to be reformed?
Quite simply, we need to be transparent, honest, and we need to be inclusive. Now, here's the interesting thing with the Democratic Party, the way it currently stands. We are at a point where the party can be completely reborn, completely rebuilt from the bottom up and the top down. And because the Republicans have so thoroughly invested themselves in establishment politics and lobbyists and the whole corruption aspect of things, right? They are all in bed with the wealthiest members of society, and everybody knows it, but everybody accepts it. They are truly the party of the 1%, and more so now than ever, to a laughable degree, where it is truly only the interests of billionaires and millionaires that are being even adhered to. So we, the Democratic Party, have this moment, this time in history where we can truly become the party of the 99%, the party of the people. Our revolution can take place here and now. And so what I would do, or what I would think needs to be done, is we need to have our presence hit really, really hard in local communities and counties across the country. We don't have a presence in rural America, and it is laughably obvious based on how everybody votes and why we're considered the devil in those counties. Warren County, Ohio is just one example of thousands. Warren County is one of the most Republican counties in Ohio, let alone the country. And I still ran as a Democrat and got about 20% of the vote. You know what I mean? it's doable, but we're gonna have to chip away at it, and it is a uphill struggle. Am I gonna sit up here and tell you and tell everybody who may be watching that I can guarantee victory in a year or two? No, I cannot. Nobody could. Jesus Christ himself could be the DNC chair and still not guarantee that. But the point is, we need to start making our presence known. We need to start showing that we care, and we have to be accountable. And what I mean by accountability is, for instance, and I don't want to talk bad about my candidate or my fellow candidates, but for instance, Keith Ellison, you said he wasn't telling the truth. We all agree he wasn't telling the truth. Holding him accountable to telling the truth or not being able to associate with the Democratic Party is one of those extreme steps that we have to take if we are to move forward. Otherwise, we will never be rid of that establishment mindset or perception, because perception is reality. And if people think Keith Ellison is establishment, whether he is or isn't, that's the reality.
So you really think that the key or the answer to what's happened to our country politically is to try to rebuild the Democratic Party, even though it's obvious from watching these DNC events that the party, meaning 90% of the people in power in the party, clearly don't want to change, and they are going to hang on tooth and nail with they're not letting go. So a lot of people I think we need to try everything. I think we need people to try to take over the DNC, try to take over the Democratic Party. I think we need people primarying these corporate Democrats. I think we need third parties. I think we need independent civic organizations. You know, it was the civil rights movement, it wasn't the Democratic Party, it was the civil rights movement that pushed the Democrats, right? It's the environmental movement that pushed Nixon to start the EPA. So we need, I think, all kinds of things happening at once. And I think a lot of people are getting caught in the trap of we can only do one thing. We can't try to help to reform I mean, if we can reform 20% of the Democratic Party, that's a start. Is that how you feel, or what do you think?
So I want to take your words and take it a step further. It's not so much that I want to reform the Democratic Party because I think it's redeemable. It's literally the only political structure in existence that can combat the GOP with the GOP. You know what I mean? That's the only thing that can go toe to toe right now. Sure, you got the Young Turks who are developing their brand, and they have this wide growing support, and the Justice Dems, and then the new 535. All these starting to be very big organizations, they have a future. I am not saying that, but I'm saying right now, at this point in time in our history, they are not strong enough to go toe to toe with the GOP, nor are they enough to fill the power void of the Democratic Party's downfall. So it's more of a self-interest. It's very self-centered that I want to keep the Democratic Party alive, because they're the only infrastructure that has a national reach, that has a state reach, and has a local reach that already exists. It just needs to be fine-tuned. And so, to your point, the takeover, that's where it comes into play. I personally believe that there shouldn't be political parties. I think that kind of defeats the purpose of a democracy, where the best foot gets put forward and people vote for people that they believe in. That's the way politics should have been. That's the way our founding fathers envisioned it. And otherwise, they would have probably put that in the Constitution, that the United States shall have this many political parties. The fact that we don't, and the fact that we're a dual and that we are so divided, has only been a very, very recent thing that to come to fruition. Sorry, I'm not speaking as well
it's okay.
as morning. But over the past 30 years, we've seen this divide, this divisiveness, the line in the sand being drawn, this us versus them rhetoric. And it's come to a head in the past 8 years, specifically because Obama was elected president. And, you know, they say it wasn't because he was black, but I mean, let's just address the elephant in the room. The GOP decided we are not going to support this black president. It wasn't that he was Democrat, it was that he was black. And the rise of racism and white supremacy in the United States during that time, through the culmination of Steve Bannon being the chief of staff of members of the White House, and Trump's administration pushing the Muslim ban within the first 10 days, for God's sakes. Clearly, racism has won, has infiltrated the Republican Party, and people don't realize it, or they don't want to accept it, because their messaging is so profoundly effective. You got to give credit where credit's due. The GOP, they have a messaging machine that we have not seen since the World War II fascist rising, the dictatorships in Italy and Spain and Russia and Germany. We haven't seen that happen until recently, and they've been planning for the long haul. And instead of playing the same game against them, we've been stepped back and letting it happen and trying to fight it here and there, to the point where now we're not present in rural America. We don't have a spine to stand up to the opposition, let alone our own people. And then the implications of money in politics, the passage of Citizens United, and the fact that we're not actively engaged in preventing it. It's causing this power suck.
Isn't
and these
it,
individuals, these tiny groups. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, isn't some of the problem, like the reason why the Democrats are so weak and they don't stand up against the Republicans? Isn't that because they take money from the same people, and the people who give them money don't want them to stand up against the ideas the Republican have? So that's why they're Cenk Uygur makes the point that the donors choose strong Republicans and weak Democrats on purpose, and that's why we get weak Democrats who are corporatists, and that's why we really have one party rule economically, and then we all fight on the edges around social issues. So isn't that really the problem, that the Democratic candidates take the same money from the same people that they're supposed to be fighting against?
And you make a very valid point, and I don't think I've brought it up yet in the forums, but I absolutely intend to in Baltimore. If $100,000 in your war chest is enough to sell your soul against your own constituents and the people who put you into office, then you have no business being in charge. If you are that weak and that corruptible, you are clearly incapable of handling power or authority of any stretch. And you're right, that is absolutely the problem. And that's why I'm the only candidate who has taken the pledge to get rid of corporate money and not accept corporate money as both a candidate or Democrat chair or as the party. And here's the reason why. We don't have to. We saw that with the Bernie Sanders movement. He brought in hundreds of millions of dollars in his campaign through little investments. And that's the thing. People felt inspired. And we know what happens when people feel inspired. They will give their left arm to fight for whatever it is they believe in. So if we can finally prove that we are a party worth believing in, to inspire, and that we're going to take care of people first and always, it doesn't matter where the money comes from, because it's going to come from people. And that is going to be our 100% fundraising event. And the second part of that, people want to talk about big money being, corrupt and all that. Well, the counter argument is, well, what about our friends in the unions? Our teachers, our laborers, AFL-CIO. What about our Costco's, and what about the wealthy billionaires that help us? You know what? They have a right to help the Democratic Party too, but they should be the ones holding fundraisers on their side of things. They're the ones that should be facilitating their union reps to be like, look, this is what the Democrats do. If they want to have high dollar events, they can have high dollar events on our behalf, so long as it's vetted. But to have them deliberately pay us and give us big checks, it's still that perception that, oh, now we're just in on the big, bad, scary unions. Because even unions, even though they built this country, even though they're the reason why we have a middle class, the perception is now that they are the enemy too. So it's a catch-22. We alienate so much, quote unquote, power from the party, but at the same time, the power is within the hearts and minds of the people. If 99% of the population steps up, does not go to work, and does not do whatever it is they do for a day-to-day, the country stands still. If all these CEOs and powerful individuals didn't come to work, not a damn thing would change. And we need to show the party and the country and political leaders that with just beyond a shadow of a doubt.